Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the engineering exploration session at Trinity College Dublin. My name's Kevin Kelly. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Teaching and Learning for School of Engineering. Also on the panel today, we have two of our current students, Laura Brady, who's a fourth-year engineering with management student, and Maya Wooliver, who is a third-year electrical and electronic engineering student. We also have the business development manager for the E3 project, that's Dermot O'Reilly. We have our director of global engagement from the School of Engineering, that's Professor Aonghus Nabola. And in the background, but playing a very important role, is Melanie Mai from the E3 business development team, who's helping to keep things running behind the scenes. So this is being recorded, so it will be available afterwards. And the format today is I'm going to present for a short period. We have some pre-submitted questions. I will go to the panel to seek their opinions and answers on those questions. And then there's also the possibility to use the Q&A facility related to the chat. You should see the button at the bottom of the Zoom session. So do feel free to add any other questions or comments you have there, and we'll try and also get to them. I beg your pardon, I did indeed, who's disappeared off the bottom of my Zoom panel list, but Daniele, you're also very welcome. Daniele is a former Trinity PhD student who is now the CEO of Easy Hydro, a spin-out company from Trinity. So apologies, Daniele, for missing you out there, but we'll definitely have some questions, I'm sure, for you as we go. So the picture in the background you're looking at is an aerial shot of Trinity College, and one of the things that you'll definitely notice when you look at that is it's quite historic. It's a very pretty campus right in the center of the city, and you may already know that if you've begun some preliminary explorations. But we're not here to give you the tourist guide. We're here to talk about engineering. Good. Apologies for that. So hopefully you're hearing my audio. So you can fill in yourself now with the updated and latest video. So it is a modern engineering school which carries out a lot of cutting edge research, and that informs and leads our teaching as well. Trinity is consistently ranked very high in the world rankings, and our staff are engaged in a range of activities apart from the teaching. So in the research, in spin-out companies, working with local industry, working with international industry. Our programs are fully accredited, meaning that they're recognized both in Ireland and abroad as being a professional engineering qualification. So you are recognized internationally as a degree that enables you to work around the world. So one of the things that we want to talk about today is the context in which engineering sits now is part of a much bigger initiative called E3. E3 stands for Engineering, Environment and Emerging Technologies, and it is based on a vision that we have in the university that the future of humanity and the future of the planet depends upon us taking a much more sustainable approach to technology and to the problems of climate change and sustainability. And that in order to do that, we can't do it alone. We can't do it in individual disciplines. So we have brought together three schools within the university: the School of Engineering, the School of Computer Science, and the School of Natural Sciences, to bring this unified perspective to how we might think about the future of the planet, the future of humanity, and the role of technology, and how that can be positively harnessed for our future. So as the subtitle there indicates, balanced solutions for a better world. So the E3 project then is something I briefly mentioned. We'll just touch on it a little bit in terms of how it's relevant for you as a potential engineering student. Probably the most obvious manifestation to you will be that we will have, when you arrive in 2024, we will have a brand new engineering building called the Learning Foundry. And if you know anything about the history of engineering or the history of technology, you'll know that a foundry is a place where raw materials are brought and energy is supplied to create new forms and new materials from those. So typically in the past, that would have been places where metals and steel and iron and things like that would have been made in a foundry. So it's an apt metaphor, I think, for what we're doing. We're bringing raw material, that's you, the students, and we are supplying an environment and an education to turn you into graduates equipped to lead in a technology enhanced future, as it said on the slide there. So this building is a 7,000 square meter building. It's specifically designed to reflect the future needs of education in the E3 area, so across technology and science. And we have really gone quite far, I think, in terms of trying to understand the future needs and to create a space that will be very different from many engineering spaces. There is a video available. I'm not going to play the video here because it would take probably too much time. But there's a lot of project working space, a lot of team working space. There's a maker space. There's lots of individual labs. There's classrooms. There's computer labs. There's a lot of the things you would expect to see, but there's also a lot of very dynamic space for students to interact with each other and express themselves in a hands-on way when addressing some of these challenges of today and tomorrow, these global challenges. We have 3 programs associated with the School of Engineering at an undergraduate level. So our largest program, which is about 250 students entering per year, is our general engineering program. So we'll speak a little bit more later, but in this program, you do 2 years of general engineering before choosing one of the specializations listed there. So we have 6 different pathways through that program, where you end up specializing in your last 2 or 3 years, as we'll see later, in one of those 6 disciplines. We then have 2 direct entry disciplines programs. One is the Engineering with Management program, which is approximately 30 students per year. And as the name implies, this has a greater focus on business and management. And as we'll see later, strongly aligned with the mechanical and manufacturing engineering stream, but also with biomedical engineering. Then we have the Environmental Science and Engineering program, our newest program. And that is also a relatively small program, about 30 students. And in this program, the emphasis is on core engineering plus environmental science. So it would be most closely aligned of the general area engineering streams of the civil, structural, and environmental engineering, but also a big emphasis on the scientific aspect. And as we'll see later, there's an option to exit through a scientific pathway or through an engineering pathway, so you can be more applied or more scientifically focused in terms of how that degree evolves for you. So the next thing I just want to mention is our programs in general share a common type of structure, and I've tried to indicate that on this slide. So in all of our programs, you have 3 years which are based in Trinity, where you study various modules. A module you can consider like a subject. So you study various subjects in a specifically designed curriculum over the 3 years. And after the 3rd year, you then have a choice. And there's 2 broad aspects of that choice. The top pathway is the bachelor degree pathway. So that's where you continue for 1 more year. And the bottom in the darker blue is the master's pathway, where you continue for 2 more years. So in the bachelor pathway, you have 1 more year in Trinity, and you do your modules or subjects, plus you do something called a capstone project. And a capstone project is an individual project where you work on a research topic or a specific topic of interest with an individual professor who will supervise you and guide you through that, and you learn how to do high-level individual engineering work. So that's the capstone project. So in the bachelor's pathway, you do the modules plus the capstone project, and you leave after 4 years with a bachelor degree. The second pathway then is the master's degree. We have a number of options, 5 different options, which I'll talk about in a second, for 4th year. And then you go into a 5th year, which is modules plus a capstone project again, although the capstone project in year 5 is a larger project and more research oriented. And then you exit with a master's degree. So within the master's pathway, as you see there on the graphic, there's 5 different options. So the first one is what we might call the traditional, or the simplest to understand perhaps, which is just you study various modules in Trinity in year 4. A second variant is where you do modules in 1 semester and you have an industrial placement or an internship in the 2nd semester. We have 2 study abroad options then, one which is a single semester study abroad. So you do your 1st semester in Trinity of modules, and then you go to another university partner somewhere else in the world and study for the 2nd semester. We also offer a full year abroad, And that's, as the name would imply, studying in another university for the entirety of your fourth year. And finally, we have what we call Unitec. And Unitec is a European partnership which involves companies and universities. And in the Unitec program, it's like a combination of study abroad and internship. You go for one semester to a university somewhere in Europe, and then the second semester you go to an industry placement somewhere else in Europe. So there are different options at the fourth year in all of our engineering programs. So now I'll move to talking in a little bit more detail about some of the specific programs. So starting with our newest program, we have the Environmental Science and Engineering program. So you can graduate with either a bachelor's degree in environmental science and engineering, or you can proceed to a master's level. So very much in accordance with the structure I mentioned on the previous slide. And here we have a structure, a common structure across the first 2 years that focuses on environmental engineering, which also includes sort of general engineering fundamentals, which are part of the toolkit of all engineers, and environmental science. And then in year 3, you have the option to take a more scientific focused. So that would be the top pathway, or more engineering or applied focus, and that's the bottom pathway. In either case, you have the various options we mentioned previously in fourth year of internship, of international study exchanges, or of taking a capstone project plus some modules. In the year 5 option, then we have an individual research project, the capstone project, and you can graduate either with the MAI, which is the same degree as in engineering, or the MAES, the Masters in Environmental Science degree. So that is the Environmental Science and Engineering degree. We then have the other 2 degrees, the General Engineering degree, where you do 2 years of common engineering fundamentals before progressing into the final cycle, so years 3, 4, and 5. So there's an exit option, as we mentioned previously, at the fourth year, or you can continue on to a 5th year. The engineering with management is very similar, except that while the content is similar across the first 2 years, it's not identical. There is more of an alignment towards mechanical manufacturing engineering, and there is more management science and business. And then in years 3, 4, and 5, there is more options in business, in management and design, and you can also choose a minor specialism in areas related to mechanical engineering or biomedical engineering, or indeed manufacturing. So these are our 3 programs that we offer. The study abroad opportunities then, and we're happy to take questions obviously on any of these, and Aonghus, as our global director, will be able to give you a lot more detail should you have an interest in that in our study abroad program. But it's part of our 5-year program, so we don't offer a study abroad program to those exiting after 4 years. It's only for those on the 5-year master's track. We have options across Europe, so various different countries, France, Germany, Sweden, Spain listed there, but other countries are also possible. So Portugal, Switzerland, Finland, a number that spring to mind, Belgium, Holland. We also have non-EU exchanges, so North America, Australia, New Zealand, and various options in Asia. We may or may not, I'm not sure, have options in South America. I think we in fact do possibly. We have Unitec, which I mentioned earlier, and this is the combined internship plus study abroad program, which includes a significant focus on management. And you can get all of these details in the webpage and in the handbook shown on the screen there, and the web address also shown on the screen. For industrial placements then, we have a wide range of companies here, both within Ireland and also some opportunities outside Ireland. All our internships happen in the 2nd semester, so that would be January to May, although many, or indeed most, students will continue working for June, July, and perhaps August with the employer. These are all paid, and there's an opportunity across a wide range of business types and sectors and geographical locations. So for those applying for next year's intake, September 2024, if you're an EU or European Economic Area applicant, then you can apply directly through our Central Applications Office, CAO. and this is based solely on your academic grades, irrespective of what particular system you've come through. So international baccalaureate or A levels or other qualifications in other countries in Europe, and Dervla will be able to answer any more questions you have on that. For non-EU students, there's a parallel process, and that's detailed here, which has more specific entry requirements, including English language requirements, and you can find out the details. And I think we'll cover those briefly at a later point today also. We have a number of scholarship programs which are available for students with EU status or with non-EU status. And again, that's something we can help you clarify this full information on our webpage to help you determine whether your status is defined as EU or non-EU. It's not it's relatively straightforward, but it's not always obvious initially. And we have various scholarships as listed there to help people cope with the costs of coming to university in Dublin. Additionally, we have scholarships which apply for all students, such as the Foundation Scholarship, and these are based on a set of examinations in the second year, which are not mandatory examinations. You can choose whether or not to take these, but if you take these examinations and do sufficiently well, then you get a number of benefits, such as reduced fees, free accommodation, and meals on campus for a number of years. And it also is quite prestigious. It's quite an exacting examination process, and those students who are successful have reached a recognized and high standard, and can be justifiably proud, and usually are quite happy to tell potential employers that they've achieved this level, because it's something worth noting. We have a number of international ambassadors here. So these are students who have come to Trinity from various different countries, and you can see those listed there on the page, talking a little bit about what their previous history was, a little bit of profile about them, and they are available. I'm sure Dervla can give more details to help people maybe get a feeling for what the university environment is, and perhaps answer questions that may be not specifically related to the university, but more about coming to Ireland and going to university in general.
Yeah, just to add in there, we have Irish ambassadors too. So Mihai is one of our Irish ambassadors. So we do have a range of students across the board, and you can ask them about kind of their experience coming from a certain place or their experience in a course. So we have students who are studying a wide range of courses across Trinity, and they're the ones specifically for engineering. But we have quite a few others as well. So everyone is welcome to chat to them, and they're available online. And if you just go onto the Trinity website, there's a chat button that pops up, and you can get their details there.
Right, thank you, Nabola. And that appears to be our last slide. So I guess at this point we can, I can perhaps end the slideshow, and we can move to some questions. So I take it somebody will bring to my attention if there's hopefully anything in the Q&A. I see there is a few questions there, but maybe we'll begin with just some general questions. And Aonghus, I might throw the first one to you here. It's a question about engineering education in general at Trinity, and maybe I'll put two of the questions together and say what sets apart Trinity's engineering program from others, like what is distinctive about Trinity, and how does the Trinity program prepare engineering students for real world challenges? And feel free to pass it on to anybody else also if you think they may bring some insight.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Kevin. I say what sets Trinity Engineering apart from others in Ireland is probably our unique entry structure of our main program being the MAI program, General Integrated Engineering, because it having 2 common years, which isn't that common. Well, it's not that common in Ireland or elsewhere. It's the system, I guess, it's used also in Cambridge and so on. It stretches people, I think, to do a little bit of every branch of engineering we offer, particularly in the second year. Maybe some of the students themselves can comment on what they think about that. But I think that really makes them into sort of a very flexible graduates, sort of resilient to trying out different things, even if they end up as a software engineer but know something about structural mechanics, for example. So it helps with the ability to learn, I guess. The second thing you were asking about real world challenges, I think that's embedded in the course in across all the years, or at least it's intended to be, with a number of project-based modules right from the first year up to the internship. I know we're going to talk about later is pretty heavily real-world challenge-based. So that's something we try and embed fully throughout the program.
Okay, thanks. Maya, maybe I might just take that part there that Aonghus was hinting at. I mean, as somebody who's come to Trinity, what would have influenced you in terms of what you feel was distinctive about Trinity? And hopefully we've lived up to whatever promises you based that decision upon.
Certainly. You already mentioned the general engineering, which is one of the main reasons I came to Trinity in the first place, was to do 2 years of general engineering, because I wasn't sure which path of engineering I wanted to take. So being able to do 2 years of general engineering was really nice to get to kind of see, like, a lot of the professors cover like different applications that they've done in their own field regards to engineering. So that kind of swayed me to choose my path that I inevitably ended up picking in third year. So I thought that was great compared to most schools where I'm from. You have to choose your specialty immediately going into engineering. This kind of gave a lot more freedom and ability to choose. I certainly like that.
Great, thanks, Maya. Laura, as somebody who came through what might be perceived as a narrower, more specialized program in terms of the engineering with management, I would always say to potential students there is as much, if not more, breadth in the program. It's just in a different direction. So, can you tell us a little bit about your choice and your experience in the program, and maybe how that might relate to what has been asked in the question?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even speaking to what Maya said, I wasn't exactly sure about, I'm still not sure about where I want to go, especially with engineering with management, though. You don't even just get an engineering background, you also get a background in more management and business side of things, which makes you even more broad. For me anyway, especially at the start of the degree, you get a really, really broad base. I mean, compared to other engineers from different schools, I have a much broader base in electrical and computer engineering than a lot of people would have, even though I'm specializing in mechanical and management, which I think makes me more adaptable. As well as that, for me, choosing management, it seems a little bit more narrow at the start, but it actually does give you a broader range of skills altogether. So that was a big reason for me choosing it.
Great, thanks. And sticking with our students for now, what kind of extracurricular activities are available? I mean, you can, give your own personal experience or just your general knowledge of what your friends and colleagues are in. I think you still have the mic open, Laura, so maybe you might like to talk about things that are potentially exciting or attractive for students coming to Trinity outside of the curriculum.
Definitely, there's a massive amount of things. Pretty much anything you're into, there is a society or a club that will address that. I mean, even for me, I like singing and acting and all of these kind of things. There's societies that I've been a part of that do those things, like the Musical Theatre Society, Players, which is an acting society. I've been a part of debating societies. There's law societies, there's engineering society. You can get involved in anything you want. As well as that, if you like sports, there's so many sports clubs. Some of them are very competitive and some of them are totally just for fun. There's a lot of facilities as well. Like we have a full swimming pool, climbing wall. Whatever you're into, there's definitely another group of students that has something in that area. So lots of extracurriculars wherever you're interested.
Maya, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, I must certainly say that I'm involved in a lot of things around campus. I only just started to join stuff in second year because I started like at the end of COVID, and I joined any club really that I thought was even mildly interesting. I ended up going to London on a group trip with the Musical Theatre Society, which was a great time, and a lot of other courses and clubs will set up group trips to go on, so you can get to know a lot of people that aren't even in your course, which is nice. And I'm on like the committee for the Sci-Fi Society, which is kind of like nerd society for anyone that cares. And there's a lot of spaces for volunteering. Like I'm in the S2S, which is like kind of mentorship for first year students. So they always have lots of opportunities. You want to get like good volunteer hours and like that instead of just like joining stuff for fun, basically. So there's a lot of things available for any student, really.
Great, thank you. Might come to you, Daniele, at this point. And hopefully I have your background approximately right here, but do correct me if I have any mistakes there. But you came to Trinity as a postgraduate student to engage in PhD studies, and then you have followed a pathway which mightn't be typical globally for PhD students, but is not totally unusual for students, either postgraduate or indeed undergraduate students in Trinity. So one of the things we are well recognized for internationally is the number of spin-out companies and commercialization of research activities. So can you tell us a little bit about what your expectations were coming to Trinity initially as a PhD student, and then how you transitioned from being a PhD student in Trinity to being the CEO of Easy Hydro?
Thanks. Yeah, so I moved to Dublin in 2016 for just to start the PhD, and at the time I was finishing I finished in summer 2016 my master's in engineering from University in Lisbon. And I was not particularly planning of coming to Dublin, but then I just came across the job offer for a PhD position, and already funded a PhD position coincidentally on the same topic that I already researched there for my master's. So I have to say that it was a really brilliant 3-year period in which it was as I mentioned, it was already like funded and quite defined project funded with the European research funds, and there were both. There were a lot of components together, so it wasn't just the classic PhD research based, but there was also a practical implementation. There were the labs, there was the networking with a lot of different companies, universities, frequent trips abroad. So that quite created the environment that then gave birth to the startup. Basically, after the end of this research project, as a group of people that met in different roles during it, and some people from outside Trinity from industrial background, we decided that it was there was an actual market for the technology that we developed at the time.
Lovely, thank you, Daniele. Nabola, can I bring you in at this point? We have a question from our Q&A just in relation to accommodation, and anybody who isn't aware probably will be pretty quickly if they start researching online that accommodation is difficult and expensive, difficult to find and expensive in Dublin. The question that's been asked is what kind of support and resources? Sorry, that's a different question.
But yeah, I know the question is grand. I can see
the general question
there anyway.
Any supports for students in terms of finding accommodation?
Yeah, so I suppose I just wanted to start by saying, because I know we have a mix of people from in Ireland, from outside of Ireland on the webinar today. So I studied engineering myself in Trinity. I did civil engineering, and I lived at home for my first 2 years and commuted in. So I'm from Bray, not too far away. So I commuted in the dark for a couple of years, and then lived on campus for a year, and then lived in nearby accommodation for another year. And I just wanted to say that for students who are joining from Ireland, you still have a really positive student experience living at home versus living in student accommodation. So I think sometimes students feel they might miss out. And so if that's an opportunity for you, I would say you can still engage in everything that's happening on campus. In terms of accommodation for students coming from further afield, we have accommodation in Trinity Hall. which is specifically for first year students. You can apply for that if you're applying through the CAO. You can apply for that before you have your CAO offers. Similarly, if you're applying as an non-EU student, you can apply as well once you've got your offer. So if you go on the Trinity Hall website, you can see all of the details there and the process for applying for that. And then we've also got the Students' Union Accommodation Advisory Service. And within that, they give some guidance if you're looking for private accommodation, in terms of questions you should ask, maybe a checklist that you should have when you're looking at accommodation. And there's also a database of host families that if you wanted to say rent a room in somebody's house, that you can do that. They have a cap on the maximum amount of rent that they can charge to keep it reasonable. So you have that as an option as well. You kind of look at it on sort of a Google map and you can see who you be living with, where it is. You can include meals with that or not include meals, and you can have it kind of specifically for term time, which can be helpful for people that they don't have to sign a lease during the summer. So there are a few different options there. And then I would also say that I know it can be tricky to find accommodation in the city centre, but because we're at the hub of all of the transport routes in terms of being on the train lines, the bus line, Lewis, you know, we're quite accessible by bike as well, that you have kind of a big sphere, there's a big radius in terms of locations that you can live. And so please don't be put off by that. There are lots of options there. And we do have, as I said, extra spaces specifically for first years. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Nabola. So I see we had one question submitted before the start of today, which maybe I'll try to answer myself here, which is, what does engineering with management entail, and which course, engineering or engineering with management, will leave me most employable by companies? And a third writer is there an option to do a master's in the engineering with management course? So the simplest to answer is yes. To the third question, there is a master's option there, the same as in all our engineering programs. With regard to the first two, as to what does engineering with management entail, I can pass to Laura when I'm done talking, and she can add anything she feels is relevant I may have missed. But it's a program designed to have an integrated philosophy of engineering with management. So while you do get engineering theory on its own and you get management theory on its own, we also have a number of modules and projects and activities which bring together the management and technology and the business and technology side of what it is to be a practicing engineer. So it is very much a technical course. There, you know, you are a fully fledged engineer. It's not engineering light in any sense. But there are opportunities to add and layer lots of management and business skills onto that from the early stages in the first year up until the final stages of your degree. As to I suppose the other things, that because it's a small program, it has a strong emphasis on design, and particularly on group work and project work. And as to which course will leave you most employable, I think it's fair to say that both leave you highly employable. Almost all of our graduates progress to employment where they're seeking employment. You know, some people will choose to go to postgraduate work, some people will choose to take time out to travel, etc. But for those seeking employment, we have almost full employment in both programs. In fact, typically before students even graduate, they will have many offers. So that would be my answer to that question. So feel free to chime in if you want, Laura, but don't feel under any obligation if you think I've covered it there.
I think you've covered most aspects of it. Just from my own perspective, definitely you still get all the technical skills that you would get from the normal engineering degree. You share a lot of common modules with general engineering, and then when you specialize with your specialty, so my specialization is mechanical, so I share most of my modules with them. But then I also get the opportunity to do more design-based finance management end of things. And for me anyway, the sort of user design and the design modules that we do in engineering with management, they're very applied, they're very hands-on. Instead of kind of learning about circuit boards and how they work, you actually have a design project where you have to put those skills into practice. So for me anyway, it's given me much better actual practical skills of working in a group and really bringing a project to fruition. So yeah.
Thank you, Laura. So there's another question here, which is, are there specific research opportunities for undergraduate students within the engineering school? So I think we could give a very short answer to that and say yes. I think the slightly more nuanced version of that is that As a research-led university, a lot of our teaching is aligned with the research on the latest research in areas. So when you are doing projects, you are doing projects at the cutting edge of that research. Particularly when you come to capstone projects, then there's a very strong opportunity to align yourself with leading research in the school. But there are other opportunities which arise. And Maya, I'm not sure if you've had any exposure to these, but Laura, I know from first experience, you have, having worked for me occasionally during the summer. Many staff members will propose opportunities for undergraduate students to engage in work outside of term time, which could be on a range of topics, but generally associated with research. So again, Laura, I don't know if you want to say anything about your own experience there, and Maya, if you have anything that you'd like to put in, but don't feel under obligation, then feel free to come in after Laura.
Yeah, for me personally, kind of the more involved that you are, if you want research opportunities, just make that clear to your lecturers. If there's somebody researching a field that you're interested in and you want to work with them, the teaching staff in Trinity is really, really helpful. If you want to do the work, they will generally try and accommodate you, especially for capstone projects. If you are interested in an area and you want to reach out to a lecturer that's taught you that before and ask them for opportunities, all of them are really responsive, and they take a lot of interest in their research topics. And if you're interested in them as well, it's a great working experience altogether. So yeah, definite opportunities. You just need to ask for them.
Thanks, Laura. We have another question then, which is a very general question we could talk about all day probably, which is, how can graduates prepare for the world of engineering? So maybe I'll start with a take on that, and then if Aonghus or Maya or Daniele, for that matter, would like to come in, then we're happy to let you in there. But I think the first thing is to choose an engineering program first of all. So choose an institution and choose a program that aligns with what your best estimate of what your values are and where you want to go in life, and then engage fully. I think engineering is a very flexible profession. You will exit an engineering program with a particular title and a particular set of skills, but a characteristic of engineers is that they're adaptable and they continue to learn. So you'll have many engineers will move from sector to sector over the course of their career. So I would say the best way to prepare is before you come to university, is be curious and have an interest in learning, and do your homework in terms of trying to choose an institution and a program, and then fully engage and embrace with all the opportunities that will be presented. Be the best in the world at the things that don't take talent. Turn up on time, do the little things. Prepare for your lectures beforehand, go to tutorials, ask questions. Get stuck into your project work early. Don't leave things to the last minute. All those little things really have a big cumulative effect in terms of building your experience. And then, as Laura said, don't be afraid to talk to people and look for opportunities, because many staff are only too delighted to deal with engaged students above and beyond the standard curriculum. So somebody who has a thirst for learning and wants to develop their skills, often there are opportunities that are mutually beneficial. So if Maya was to knock on my door and say, I really want to learn about XYZ, and that's an area that I'm interested in, then we can probably find something that Maya can do that can really benefit her, but can also perhaps be interesting and of use to me. So there are a lot of opportunities, and it's really about maximizing your engagement to take those opportunities. So that would be my advice for preparing. I don't know, Aonghus, if you'd add anything to that.
Yeah, I had one or two things, Kevin. I think in preparing for the world of engineering, one, so let's say in terms of our program, one of the very popular things is internship, and I wouldn't know exactly the statistic, but probably about half of the students, or maybe more, do internship, and that, I think, prepares them very well for the world of engineering. But I often say to students that if they're interested in preparing for the world of engineering in a kind of practical way, not necessarily to wait for that. And if you were really wanted to be proactive in preparing for the world of engineering, would be to go, and something I did in my own career is to spend summers working in different engineering offices. And like you were mentioning, your course, whatever you choose, gives you certain technical skills to do something, but engineering is kind of about problem solving, and there's a certain attitude and creativity to that. And I think the world of work exposure to that helps you to sort of not be flustered by problems, and you know, to have the approach to problems are interesting because we can attempt to solve them as opposed to being negatively problems.
Great, thanks. Angus, anybody else like to come in on that, on how should one prepare for the world of engineering?
There was a specific question similar to that in the chat for Daniele. I wonder what he
may have answered that perhaps in
yeah,
I'm not sure.
he was writing it, but
yeah, there were a few questions about the building a company, and there was another one about the specifically for me about the what makes Trinity graduates employable, sort of. I'm rephrasing, but and I basically yeah, the two things I could think of, and speaking as CEO of a company that recently hired actually a Trinity graduate, just less than a couple of months ago. And in the past, we also had a Trinity summer intern that was doing an undergrad mechanical engineering. I think it's a combination of the versatility coming from the general engineering background in the beginning of the course. So having this exposure to different fields and different topics, and also the fact that a lot of classes would be, I mean, comparing to other universities, would be relatively small, allowing for a better interaction with professors, lecturers, and the rest of the class. That's what comes to my mind.
Great. Thanks, Daniele. Nabola, a question I might put to you here. We have a couple of questions around admission and the application process. So the first one is in relation to the CAO system. So for those listening, that's the one that is relevant for students applying from within the European Union, and asking if the qualification level in terms of the CAO points has changed. If they changed last year, I mean, I guess the simple answer is they can change and do change a little bit every year. And we are talking about 3 programs, but they are publicly available. So the cao.ie website will give you the points for every year, and it'll also, I think, give the median points perhaps, or it definitely gives the final admission points for every program. So that's probably the best place to check for that, I guess, is it?
Yeah, so for the CAO, we had a couple of questions about the CAO. So I'll answer a couple of them. So the first one is about the kind of points and entry requirements. So so everybody's clear, the minimum requirements in terms of the subject requirements are the same. Like if you're applying to the CAO, if you're applying as non-EU students, so we'd have a maths requirement within engineering that stays the same, regardless of like what points change each year. So the minimum requirement for the subject, it remains the same every year. In terms of the overall grade requirements for the CAO, that's based on supply and demand. So as Kevin said, it changes every year. We have a set number of places. Everybody's ranked in order. And we have about 200 places in engineering, so 205 places, I think. So then the top 205 students get in. Now, someone else has asked how the grades are assessed if you're from outside of Ireland, but you have EU fee status. So if you go onto the CAO page that Kevin mentioned, so cao.ie, and if you go to information for applicants, and there's scoring button there. And if you go into that, there is a full booklet called, I think it's called EU Entry Requirements for EU and EA applicants. And if you go into that, it gives you an overview of each exam system and how the grades are converted to this common point system, which is out of the 625 points. So for anyone who's not from Ireland, if you go and have a look at that booklet, it will tell you how the points are converted, so you have a bit of a sense of where you're at in terms of maybe your IB grades, your French bac grades, whatever it might be. And then, as Kevin said, the final cutoff points for each year. And I think usually the median points are published every year. They are subject to change because it just depends on who's applying. And there were a couple of years during COVID where people were getting their grades based on predicted grades rather than exams. So they were a little bit higher. So they're kind of leveling out a bit in some cases, but we can't kind of predict them every year. So that's for the CAO. And then for non-EU students, there's also an admissions guide on the Trinity website, and that gives you an overview of what you required if you're not applying for the CAO. So hopefully that answers the CAO questions. And there's also, yeah, I think that was it. And if there are other questions coming into the chat, I'm trying to answer everybody individually. So hopefully I've got to most of your questions about admissions.
Okay. So there's one more question while you're still active there, Nabola, which is, are there any places for DARE students, DARE? So just to say that for DARE is an acronym, and there's a number of programs Trinity has, and indeed universities across Ireland have for admitting students under slightly different schemes. So some of these relate to disability, some of them relate to geographical and social disadvantage, etc. So I think the simple answer is yes, we have a percentage of places on each program reserved for.
So we have about 10% of the places on each of our programs are for students from non-traditional backgrounds. So that would include kind of mature students coming in through here, the higher education access route, and DARE. And then a couple of people also asked, just while we're talking about points, about whether there were alternative access routes in if they didn't get the points. So there is an FET QQI access route. So if people want to look into that, where you do a year beforehand, and then you get assessed based on your grades in that year. And I've sent a link to the person who asked the question, and that will bring you to that access route. So there are a few options there for people.
Okay, so somebody has asked a question here. I'm interested in environmental engineering and science, but is the course much different to the original environmental science? They say role. I'm not sure, do they mean the graduate role or the environmental science program? To answer that, I would say it's related. I mean, it's obviously not totally orthogonal to the environmental engineer or the environmental science option, but it is a new program with a distinct identity and flavor. And really within it, this program was developed as part of the E3 initiative. So we currently have students in the first 3 years of this program. So it's only been running 3 years. And the program has been very specifically designed to bring a solution-oriented mindset to the environmental science area. So it allows students to focus on the environmental engineering. So that is the design and the implementation skills that you get in engineering with the scientific basis that you get in environmental science, and then to have a flexibility of pathway to focus more on the science side or on the engineering side. So there's a lot of focus here, much as the engineering with management program puts a big focus on applied and group and project-based work. So too with the environmental science and engineering. So there's a lot of interdisciplinary work and project-based work and working with across a wide range of challenges. So I think it is quite distinct and different in terms of identity to the original environmental science program that has been there for a number of years. We have another question then. Are there summer opportunities or programs during the year for high school 5th to 6th year students interested in STEM? So I think the answer is, generally speaking, no. But it's never any harm to reach out. So we don't typically have organized programs. We have in the past had programs, but more aimed at a slightly younger cohort. So 1 year younger than that, or also we have something called the Walton Club, which has an engineering stream, which is aimed at a younger cohort again. There would be kind of 11 to 14-year-olds. So we have had something for people in the 4th year of school, transition year programs, but definitely on an ad hoc basis, some people will take students from 5th or 6th year, usually during the summer period, or occasionally for a shorter period during Christmas vacation or during school vacation period. So not a formal program, but there are opportunities possibly if you ask. And the worst that can happen is somebody will say no, but do feel free to reach out. Somebody has asked about the management information systems course. I I guess by this they probably mean the Management Science and Information Systems Studies, which is the course run by our colleagues in computer science. So I think we have a session next week, Derbla, is on computer science. So that would be the appropriate time to bring that up. So that's not associated with the School of Engineering.
Yeah, exactly. And there's going to be a webinar at the same time next week for all the courses in the School of Computer Science and Statistics. So we'll be happy to answer
we have a question. I might throw this into you, Maya. This is about the accessibility of resources such as labs, workshops, and technology. So maybe just in your experience when you have to use these or when you want to use these, what kind of experience do you have with labs, workshop, and technology?
I'd certainly say that for any course, like mandated labs and stuff like that, they're always really good about scheduling lab times and for specific groups to make sure that everyone can like fit in the rooms. Because sometimes there's a lot of engineering students trying to use the lab, so it's really good to go in when you're scheduled. But also like, so I'm in electrical and computer engineering, and so electronics usually have a computer lab that is free, open use for electronic students. It's generally empty at any time and has the only time it's going to be used. So it's really useful to if you're looking for a place to sit and do lab work outside of school. And technology is always really easy. There's lots of computer labs that are open around campus that most students can use, especially if you need certain types of computers. There's like a Linux lab, a Mac lab, and a Windows lab. Any type of computer you can need to use is available. So it's good about having lots of open opportunity around campus if you need to get any work done specifically.
Okay, thank you, Maya. So I have a question here that I might partly answer myself and then put over to you, Aonghus. So it's for the two professors. In a world where sustainability is becoming increasingly critical, how can engineers balance the demands for innovation with the imperative to create environmentally friendly solutions? And can you provide examples of engineering projects that effectively address both aspects? So if I was to give my first answer to that, I suppose is that in one sense, you can think of sustainability as a constraint to your solutions, just as finance or time or something else would be a constraint, and you look for solutions that operate inside that constraint. But I think you can also use it as a motivator. So this can be, you can go with the goal of sustainability to try and find innovative ways of doing something that lead to more sustainable outcomes, either specifically or more generally. So I'll give you an example of a project I was involved in a couple of years ago. It's now a spin-out company called Flow Waste, based in Chicago. And in this project, we started from, we were in conversation with an Irish charity called Food Cloud that looked to redistribute excess food. And we asked them, are there interesting challenges around food waste? Because we knew that this was a big contributor to our carbon footprint. That you guys are not currently well set up to address, but you would be interested in. And they said, yes, there's the whole area of hospitality and food services. So this would be things like restaurants and canteens in large businesses and the amount of food that is wasted in those places. So to cut a long story short, we had a number of students working on a project there who ended up focusing on workplace canteens, using computer vision solutions to analyze food that was left on people's plates, matching that with what was ordered and served, and then trying to understand how the customers' choices were influencing the amount of waste food. So, for example, were the portions of chips too big, leading to lots of potatoes ending up in the bin, or was there certain dishes that just didn't get eaten in significant quantities at particular times? And that, as many innovation projects do, continue to pivot. And actually, where the company currently is looking at meat processing industry, providing computer vision solutions there to reduce waste in the meat processing industry. So it's an example, I suppose, there of using sustainability as a motivator to try to find innovative solutions, and then almost like a leapfrogging effect where an idea unlocks another idea and leads to other potential applications. So that would be an example from my area. And Aonghus, I don't know if you'd like to talk about any.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question kind of pitches innovation against environmentally friendly solutions. So innovative, environmentally friendly solutions are something I've spent the last 15 years trying to come up with for different reasons. I'll give an example somewhat related to what you mentioned, or at least the same sector, Kevin. Food cloud. I'm going tomorrow to Zambia to work a little bit on a project about recycling waste heat from food processing, wastewater. Food processing uses a lot of hot water for the production of the food products we all use. And so if you imagine for producing steam and hot water for various things, and what comes out the other side of these factories is hot wastewater, which can be up to 70 degrees. And that's a terrible waste of energy if you imagine that you took the water into the factory at possibly 10 degrees and then waste it out, boil it up, and then throw it out the other side. Quite polluted, but also hot. So in that way, we're trying to reduce the amount of fuel used in food production, but that also makes it from a non-environmentally friendly kind of perspective, it reduces the cost, right? And so there's a bit of innovation, but it also reduces the amount of emissions. And another example could possibly, if I pass it over to Daniele, the whole focus of the company Easy Hydro, which I had some involvement in, is an environmentally friendly innovation. Daniele, do you want to briefly describe what it is you spend your time doing?
Yes, the basic concept is looking at existing water infrastructure for instance, drinking water utilities, or mines or different kind of industrial water supplies, and having a look at where there are locations when there is a potential energy available in the form of excess pressure, which is just being dissipated as a heat and noise in valves, and instead adding a small hydropower generator. So still looking at innovation, a green sort of green innovation. I mean, we are retrofitting the existing pipe systems and producing renewable energy.
Great, thank you, Daniele. So we're coming pretty close to the end of time. So maybe I'll just ask if any of the panel have anything else they'd like to add or any question they'd like to bring to our attention. And if not, then I would like to thank everybody. First of all, to thank all the audience for taking the time to join us today. And we hope we got to answer all of your questions, but there was a lot of activity happening in the chat and a lot to get through with the panel here. So hopefully we answered at least most, and do feel free to come back to us via our various channels and we try to answer those other questions. My thanks to Laura and Maya in particular for taking time out from what's a busy time here as they enter into the final few weeks of term to join us, and it's been very helpful to have that student perspective. To Melanie in the background, who's been a big contributor to making today happen, to Daniele for taking his time away from running a company to give us his experience, and again, very valuable to hear from that side, to Aonghus, our global director, and to Nabola from E3. Thank you all, and we will see you at some point in the future, we hope.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.